Hello, hello.
Hello, Anessa.
Hi.
So this is your first time in a studio like this, yeah? Do
Yeah.
you want to talk about what just happened But
Oh, okay.
before we started recording? You want to give listeners a little preview of how your first experience has gone so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I walked in here. It's a beautiful studio. It's awesome that a place like this is available. I think
Mhm.
people are really going to benefit from being able to use this space and convey a message. So using the headphones, I went to put it on. Somehow, I don't even know how my part of my hand got clipped inside the headphone. I couldn't get it out. I was like, "Oh, this really hurts." I'm like, "Oh, I can't get my hand out. Oh, this really hurts. I needed you to help me get my hand out." And I'm okay.
And now you're bleeding?
Yeah, I'm a trooper. I'm bleeding just a bit, but it's part of the journey. It's part of the experience. And then I was like, "Okay, I made it through that. I'm gonna put my headphones on." And then I put my headphones on, and one of the earphones is completely facing the other way. I thought it was perfectly fine. I was like, "Okay, I made it. I'm ready to go." You're like, "You ready to record?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." No, yeah,
You weren't ready.
no,
That's okay.
yeah.
It's a nice little way to break you in and welcome you to a
Yeah.
studio like this.
Yeah,
I feel like
definitely.
Jeremy's the one this is his studio. He's put this together. Uh, I think he'll appreciate stories like that
Oh, yeah.
almost as much as he'll appreciate people just using the space and generally enjoying what this setup allows for them to do.
Yeah.
So we'll have to tell him about that story as well.
Oh, yeah.
He'll be confused, but he'll love it. I know
Yeah.
he'll love it.
And I was also wondering, he's probably seen it all if
You'd think
everything
so,
is
but I think
getting
that might,
filmed.
yeah, that might be something a little different. That might be something a little new for him.
Yeah.
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 So we got together today because we were going to talk about some pretty interesting shit. The first of which was going to be healing modalities.
Mhm.
So start us off. In your mind, what do you feel a healing modality really is?
I feel healing modalities really relates to anything that keeps you centered and balanced as you navigate through life. And I feel life can be so unpredictable. So to find what practices you can really incorporate and turn to just in general, I think a lot of it becomes part of just your general outlook when it comes to life. So I think it just extends, and I feel it's always evolving based on where you are in life and what's going on.
And do you think that's more psychologically based, or is that something that you feel is a practice that you have to implement into your everyday life to really take advantage of?
I think it can really be psychological just as you're finding what really resonates and works with you. But I do feel the bigger takeaway is what you can implement into your every single day life to benefit yourself.
Actually, that's a great segue.
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about one, two, or three things that you've implemented into your life. Maybe not necessarily on a regular basis, maybe
Hmm.
not on a daily basis, but just a practice that
Hmm.
you feel has really translated well for you.
Yeah. I feel personally for myself, meditation has been so helpful just in being able to calm the mind and center myself within my own body. I feel over the years, especially when I was younger, I had a lot of anxiety, just different thoughts that I was going through, different experiences. And then as I was able to incorporate meditation into my practice and lifestyle and being able to find peace within myself has really helped me just able to process things and center myself. And now I can identify when my body needs that. And I see the benefit of being able to do that for myself. And I feel it's also extended just to my overall outlook and approach to life. So it's definitely been helpful for me in that respect.
And when you say meditation, do you mean is this something that you've worked into your daily schedule or a daily routine, or is this a as you need you take some time to step back and give yourself that space?
Yeah. And I think it's really it's been dependent upon what's been going on in life. But when I do take the time to do it as much as I can, because life is so busy, and I do feel you're going to benefit from being able to incorporate whatever types of modalities into your life. And I do feel whenever I do take the time for myself, there's so many benefits to it. So, as much as I can, I will try to turn towards that. And I do find it's super productive for myself.
What do you feel was the last major? I was going to say, what do you feel was the last major event that had you feeling like you had to meditate? But rather than that, what do you feel was the most or not influential? What do you feel was the most impactful benefit that you've realized from meditating recently?
Hmm.
I hope that made sense. Did that question make sense?
Yeah, that made sense. I think just the general health improvements of being able to calm down the body, to not have adrenaline running your mindset. And when you are overwhelmed, how do you navigate that? That's really been helpful for me.
And what was the last time you felt really overwhelmed? There's a loaded question for
Yeah,
you.
I'd say even about a week ago. A
Oh
week ago.
no.
Yeah, about a week ago. Just, there's so many different things going on in life all the time. And I'm really good at being in tune with myself. So I feel, again, so much of it just depends on like how you wake up feeling in the morning. And like I can feel like, oh, something feels like a bit off. Like, what's there? Let me go look at what's really going on. And then to be like, okay, so I can see this is telling me that I need some time for me to really center myself and process how I'm feeling, and whatever emotions come up, to really sit there and let those emotions reveal more of myself to myself. And then to be able to sit with it and be like, okay, take that time for myself, process the emotions that are coming up, to really transmute them, and then to be able to walk more freely in my day. And then for the rest of the week, and then the day after, you'll wake up and be like, that really benefited me, because I feel completely different on a separate day after the fact. And I think that's what's been really helpful for meditation. It's how you feel after the fact. And then you're able to show up for yourself differently, show up for the world, how you interact with others, how you're interacting with yourself, and how you're hearing yourself, and how you're really experiencing yourself.
Do you feel and this might be a really nice segue into maybe the dietary part of this, which I think is maybe the second half to any kind of a healing modality, but do you feel that your diet has also contributed to the impact that your meditation has had?
Oh, definitely. I feel over the past, I'd say about 10 years, really experimenting and getting in tune with the body to recognize what you need, and to also pay attention to what you're consuming, because I do feel there's a strong correlation in terms of what you're eating, and it affects your overall health and performance, whether it be your brain health, your body's physical fitness, and just how you navigate everything. And to stay away, well, to do as best of a job as you can to be conscious of what you're consuming, and just recognizing how certain foods are going to contribute to inflammation. So, how is that really going to react in your body, on top of just the psychological experience of being alive, and to make more conscious decisions between what you're consuming, how regularly you're having things, and again, to eat as natural as possible. Because I really do feel the more you can eat natural, I think there are so many benefits that your body will be able to gain from that. And I think that's where everything tends to come full circle. So again, whatever practice you have for your psychological, there's so many things you can do for your body as well. And I feel like that's even where exercise comes into play. How to keep everything moving as best as you can as you're just navigating life.
This is completely unrelated, but I remember going through an ice cream aisle, and I told
Hmm.
you about this,
Hmm.
where there wasn't a single ice cream in that entire stack of ice cream that didn't have some weird preservative
Hmm.
or a what's that one? Carrageenan.
Yeah, inflammation,
What's the like paint thinner one you were telling me about?
trisodium phosphate
Why is that in everything?
in everything.
It's in
And
cereal.
yeah, and children's cereal. So even when you look at health from that standpoint, whatever foods you're consuming, that's your fuel. Your
Mhm.
body is going to be taking in that information. That information is going to be free floating amongst your organs. Everything's going to be working inside your body to break that down, and even through the filtration process. And again, to think about what you're consuming over a lifetime, how that affects your, obviously, your gut health, your brain health, just in terms of maintenance. But something as simple as trisodium phosphate that's in children's cereals, to think that children, they're developing their immune systems, they're building that up. So when you really think about, there's a product available that has something that's detrimental to the body, just because it's available doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. And again, children are eating this like for snacks, for breakfast, like
Adults are eating this stuff for
adults are
snacks as
eating it
well
as
sometimes.
well. And ideally, you should be able to trust the products that you're consuming. And I feel this is where due diligence and just being aware of what you're consuming, and to realize how much control we really do have over a lot of things. Of course, it's not easy for everyone. Life is busy.
Mhm.
People are just trying to manage and stay afloat, especially with everything we've been seeing in the past few years. Like, people do have their plates full, but it's these simple changes that can have a long lasting impact. BHT is another example. That's in
Is it another preservative?
It's another preservative, and that's in so many cereals for children,
Yeah.
crackers, snacks, and like you mentioned, carrageenan and ice cream. Children are having ice cream all the time, as are adults.
Mhm.
This whole concept of comfort food, but it might be comforting in the moment, but what is that comfort doing to your entire digestion system
Long term as
long
well.
term? And then you think about the course of someone's life, how many extra fillers, artificial dyes, etc., is your body having to work through filtering? What do these things lead to long term? And this is just when it comes to food.
Mhm.
There's so many other things like household products, makeup products. There's
Actually,
so many things.
you mentioned dyes,
Yeah.
and it just reminded me. what's that? What are those 3 ingredients? Um, like red 54 or something,
Yeah.
yellow 19. There's
There's
these particular ingredients that are a color and a
yes, and
number.
there's a number associated with it as well. And again,
Mhm.
hyperactivity, ADHD, ADD. So again, even a lot of the diagnoses that we're seeing in children
Are coming from stuff like
or
that.
even in adults, if you could really look back and be like, okay, how do we simplify this? How do we try to recognize where these things could be coming from? There's genetics, there's epigenetics, but there's also lifestyle, there's also diet, there's also practice, there's also what's your exposure level to all these various things.
Mhm. Oftentimes, I think self-talk has equally as important a role to play in our development, our overall development, whether that be physical or mental, as the food that we're putting into ourselves.
Hmm.
And it's kind of scary when you're pairing negative self-talk with paint thinner in your cereal.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what that must be doing at a level that we're never really going to pay attention to it the way that we
Hmm.
should, or at least I don't think we can,
Hmm.
because half the time it's hidden. What was that? I showed you. There's a brand for anybody who's listening who's outside of Canada. There's a brand out here, a very popular brand, President's Choice. It's in a number of our supermarkets. One in particular is, just a superstore, and they're really big on right now. Anyway, they're really big on pushing these insect foods, right? These insect power foods,
Power
and
foods.
yeah, power foods. Yeah, right. What a crock of shit that is. But
Yeah.
the crazy thing is that there was a fruit juice. I sent you this
Hmm.
picture,
Yeah, you
or I
did.
think I just told you about this. I can't remember. It was
Yeah,
one or the other.
you sent me a photo of it.
Yeah, and it was this woman who was really really distraught because she brought home this fruit juice for herself and for presumably for her family, maybe even
Hmm.
just herself and her partner, or maybe even just for herself. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And it was I can't remember the name
Started
of
with a
it. Was a
C.
CH or something. I'll find it and
Yeah.
I'll throw it into like the show notes or something.
Hmm.
But she sat there and she's at the grocery store thinking this is the same fruit juice that I get regularly or whatever it was.
Hmm.
Gets home and takes a look at the ingredients, and all of a sudden now there's that ingredient listed. She Googles that ingredient, and that ingredient is an insect.
Hmm.
And that insect is apparently heavily pesticided against.
Hmm.
And so presumably the insects that they're harvesting to put in our foods are full of the pesticides that they're telling our
Hmm.
kids not to play in the grass that's been treated.
Exactly.
But they're totally okay with us eating this and consuming this?
Exactly. So again, if you're going to have of course, the topic of pesticides and everything that's just been done to the food system in general, Monsanto, all these various companies that are involved, but that's another element to it. What is this doing inside the body
Mhm.
and for a prolonged period of time?
And apparently our bodies can't process it or have a very hard time. I can't remember what I'm
Of course.
not qualified to even talk about the details here, but
Mhm.
our bodies can't process it and we can't digest it the way that
Mhm.
we're supposed to, or the way that
Mhm.
presumably your body would want to
Right.
be able to make use of the nutrients or whatever
Of
it
course.
is. So they call this a power food when in reality all it's doing is
Harming people.
messing up our bodies
Of course.
in a very very tangible way.
Mhm. And then you think of power foods. Okay, power, but who is it empowering?
Yeah.
And are you empowered by what you're eating? And also, how you were mentioning how your self talk, are you empowered by what you're thinking?
Mhm.
These things are so interconnected. But again, to be using this bug to provide coloring, another thing we always talk about, all the coloring just in food in general, annatto, caramel
Oh yeah.
coloring, all these various things.
Annatto, what's annatto known for again? There's like you've explained this to me a couple of times.
There's coloring that's added to
But is annatto
some
also a preservative or is
foods.
annatto something different?
I would have to confirm. I'd have to come back to you on that one. But I do know, even for instance, when you're seeing all these vegan products or they're plant based, it's just as important for any type of food that you're consuming to really recognize
Mhm.
what has been put into this product and how is your body going to react to this over a prolonged period of time.
I think an unfortunate reality of this movement to go towards plant-based stuff is just as much a virtue signal and like just as much a tool for virtue signaling as a lot of other shit that we're seeing right now.
Hmm.
But the crazy thing is that it's becoming more and more of the problem that it aims to.
Alleviate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's this saying that just kind of came into my head, and you can loosely kind of apply it here. And it's you either, how does it go? You might know it. You either die the hero or you live long enough to become the villain.
Hmm.
Something along those lines.
Hmm.
Somebody I'm sure will will correct it, but I believe that's what the saying is.
Yeah.
And the more and more I see these, so now coming full circle, coming back to this ice cream example that I kind of started us off this track with,
Hmm.
I look at ice cream and I'm like, ice cream was something that we got super hyped for.
Of
I
course.
still get super hyped for it. I'm 5 years old inside. I still get super hyped for it, but now I find myself
Yeah.
only buying, for example, dairy free. I showed you one of the ice creams. You like that one too. I think you
love
might have
it.
even found it for me.
So good.
But that particular brand, you
Mhm.
look at their ingredient list, and their ingredient list is, we're talking 10 ingredients deep, and
Mhm.
it's whatever the flavors say. It was like a chocolate one. It'll be
Right.
like cacao nibs and organic cacao.
Right.
It's coconut based or it's cashew based, so there's no
Mhm.
dairy whatsoever in it.
Mhm.
None of the shit that we see in all these other ice creams is in there. It's a little bit more expensive per pint. It's like, $7-8 for a pint
Mhm.
versus $3.99 for like a liter that you see of Breyers or any of the other
Mhm.
fancy brands.
Yeah.
But you look at the ingredient list in those ones and it's not, you look at it and you're like, this is not ice cream. I'm just eating chemicals.
Yeah. You're eating an entire list of chemicals, essentially.
Mhm.
And again, inflammation contributes to so many health ailments in general. So when you connect the dots with all these different things, you empower yourself so much by what you're eating, as
Mhm.
much as what you're thinking. But again, something as simple as ice cream, like if you're able to look at a product and feel safe in giving this to a child, for example, that's a pretty good threshold to be like, okay, how do you feel about consuming this? And are you going to be harmed by it? And again, even finding alternatives. Yes, people have sweet cravings. Like you have those who love ice cream, but to recognize you're also able to satisfy that hunger or desire through cacao powder.
Mhm.
There are so many alternatives available.
I have a good friend of mine, an old friend of mine. He has been living in Spain for the past little while, for the past handful of years. Actually, there's two of them in particular. He's relatively new to Spain, and the other friend of mine, she's been in Spain for a while.
Mhm.
And so for her to have been there for now, I think she's pushing 7 years or something in Spain.
Oh, wow.
And she consistently talks about the quality of the food. Always. She's been talking about the quality of the food from the very beginning. And this isn't to say that I think the quality of the food over there is perfect. I think she actually actively goes out to find the quality of food that she ends up talking about.
Mhm.
But she says it's so readily available and it's so more easily accessible
Access is
than out
everything.
here. And this other friend of mine now, he's been out there for 2 years.
Mhm.
And he was really quick to tell me he's also an immigrant to Canada.
Mhm.
And one of the first things he said to me when he moved to Spain was he said, I can't believe how wrong we're doing it in Canada. And I said, which part?
Right? Which
And,
part?
which part do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the politics or you want to talk about the food? What do you want to talk about? Because
'Cause
there's a
it's
lot of
all
it. Yeah, there's a lot of it
yeah.
that's a hot mess.
Yeah.
But which part? And he said
Mhm.
specifically the food. I've never eaten so well in my entire life
Yeah.
as I'm eating right now, but it's all the
Mhm.
same foods. I
Yes.
said, what do you mean? And so he proceeds to just show me, he sent me a couple of pictures and things of food that he's buying.
Mhm.
And you look at the ingredient list, you look at even just in some cases the color
Mhm.
of the food. It just looks so much more. Our idea of organic is nothing compared to some of what he's shown me.
Mhm.
A red pepper is a red pepper is a red pepper,
Yeah.
or at least I thought.
You would like to
You'd like to think. Yeah, but
Right.
not always the case.
Right.
Because in this case, you see him, and he even sat there like he shows me this red pepper and he bites into it, and it sounded like an apple.
Mhm.
It sounded like some crazy, like a gala apple or like a pink lady apple kind of thing. There was just this awesome crunch and crisp to it.
Mhm.
And then he made a paella and all these different things. Like he started really leaning into Spanish cuisine.
Mhm.
He's experimenting with all these different ingredients that he's never used before, and ingredients that he's really familiar with, but is rediscovering because they're so much better than everything that he's known. He
Mhm.
hated tomatoes for a long time. Now he's sitting here out there just eating them like apples. Speaking of apples.
And it could depend, where are you eating the tomatoes? And again, when you look at food safety and regulation, for instance, Russia, you're not allowed to have GMOs.
Mhm.
And yet America is a free-for-all. And you mention all the time how Canada is a cousin to the United States. What foods do we have coming in here?
Yeah.
And how is that impacting people's health for the long term? Certain diseases and ailments that we're seeing in different countries. Of course, there's so many variables that contribute to certain ailments, especially over a lifetime. But again, the safety that's going into regulating food. And again, when you start to look at all the revolving doors amongst different corporations, industries, all these different things, there's so many connections.
Yeah.
And things start to make so much more sense.
And you start to see the potential I say potential, but realistically, it's more you see the very, very apparent conflicts of interest
Of course, lobbying.
everywhere across the
Hmm.
board. You see it with the dairy cartel up
Exactly.
here in Canada, and I use that in a very, very calculated manner, the dairy cartel, because that's what they
Hmm.
are. And then you see it even through, unfortunately, even just food transport in a lot of ways.
Right.
Having spent time in Mexico recently, it was just shocking to see the lack of quality food in certain places
Right.
or the aggressive marketing, not or, sorry, and the aggressive marketing of really, really shitty food.
Hmm.
Despite the fact that, by all intents, or not intents, but by all accounts, I think I mentioned this to you. Some of the healthiest people I've ever seen in my life
Hmm.
were in Mexico. Coincidentally, they also happen to be the people who are like, keep me the fuck away from everything that supermarket is selling.
Of course.
And instead, I'm going to go to that farmer's market that's 3 blocks out, and I'm going to buy everything local from
Hmm.
all these people who are locally growing their food.
And you know who's growing it. And you're probably going to have a lot more transparency in terms of how they're treating the vegetables that they're growing or
Yeah.
the grains that they're growing, and being able to really ask, what are they using? And again, that's that whole concept of convenience. Are you eating simply out of convenience? Are you on autopilot? Are you paying attention? Like IBS, digestion issues, eczema, so many different things can really be an extension of what you're eating and what are you consuming. How you mentioned in Mexico, why are these products available here?
Mhm. And
There's
there.
here and there. There's so many other reasons for this, historically as well.
Yeah. The crazy thing is also that there's certain food you can get here, for example, here in Canada, and the exact same food that you would get in Mexico has added ingredients.
And why is that? And who does that benefit?
It
And
benefits
what
the
is
companies who are trying to sell whatever that chemical compound or whatever it is.
Mhm,
It's benefiting them
mhm. And to
at the
recognize
expense of a population,
exactly,
unfortunately.
exactly, the entire population, and all for the purpose of shelf life.
Yeah.
So the concept of shelf life as well, if there's shelf life in your foods, there's going to be shelf life in your stomach in terms of
There's
what
an
you're,
idea.
yeah, in terms of how you're going to be able to filter this out of your system. You have one liver, it's working all the time,
Yeah.
as is your entire digestive tract working all the time. It's just so interconnected.
Yeah. I don't know too many people who can halfway through their life
Get a new system.
opt for a second
Hmm.
digestive tract or
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
So that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Good segue into, I mentioned people are happier and people are healthier, at least in a lot of places that I saw in Mexico, people were happier and healthier.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's just necessarily their diet, but I also think it's their lifestyle, their routine,
Mentality.
and yeah, and even just their mentality, the way that they think about each day. They move much more intentionally than what I've seen here, especially in certain cities,
Mhm.
specifically in some cases liberal cities, but that's a whole other conversation. But they
That's
they
another
move,
episode.
yeah, they move very, very differently. They move much more fluidly, but intentionally so. And so like I said, this is a great segue into personal development.
Mhm.
I think the personal development that comes from, just to tie this full circle kind of thing, the personal development that naturally ends up coming from you spending more time focusing and being really intentional about what you eat, it has to spill over into what you think.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I think caught me off guard many years back was I hated being in the city that I was in.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I think I projected that outwards. And I said, fuck this city. I want to get out of here. I hate this place. It was a lot of very, very misplaced anger. And I didn't know it at the time. But over time, I've come to truly understand where that came from. And it just came from, as I said, misplaced anger. I was outwardly directing an energy that I should have been directing inward to just better my own circumstance and to better my life. And that ended up transcending into several other very, very concentrated efforts to just better myself. But I don't know what would have got me there if it wasn't me just feeling like my back was against the wall and I had to make a change.
Mhm.
So I'll throw this back over to you. When have you found, or where have you found rather in your life, that you've had to take a massive, massive change that has resulted in something that now you feel is lifelong and just a habit and an
Mhm.
automatic
Mhm.
that is going to stay with you for many, many years, if not forever?
Mhm. I feel that's such a real, relatable circumstance that so many people can relate to if they haven't experienced it yet. It's something that they might run into later on in life when you feel that you have your back up against the wall and you have no other option but to try something new
Mhm.
and to try a new approach and to really deal with yourself. And I've definitely experienced that over the past few years when I got to a place with certain things that had taken place in life and everything, and recognizing just the impact of what certain experiences have had on you. And then when you finally, I won't say you, when I finally got to a place where it's like, okay, I actually need to deal with how I feel about certain things. And as I went to unpeel all those various things that I wasn't yet ready to face, as I went through that, that completely changed my self talk, my way of thinking, my outlook, my experiences. And I think you really need to do the inner work and you need to be able to face how you feel. And it might take time. Some emotions are not easy to navigate through, or they're really uncomfortable. It is demanding to do the inner work. But when you commit to yourself in that way, you benefit in such profound ways because it's all about who you become on the other side.
Mhm.
So I feel self-reflection, admitting how you feel about certain things and reflecting and even shifting your perspective to ask yourself, what did these things teach me about myself? Sometimes we go through difficult times in life, but there's purpose to it. You might not see it as you're going through it, but when you get to the other side, there's so much wisdom that comes from the experiences that you've had in life. And everyone is living life on a completely different path and journey, but it's all about self-development and evolving as a person and getting to the next version of yourself. And only you know how you feel about things. So as much as you want to speak with friends or family, or of course, seeking professional help if that's what one requires, to be honest with yourself and face how you're feeling
Mhm.
is so important. You can't run away from how you feel. It will be there.
Well, I think you can try, but you're not going
You
to get
can
very
try,
far.
but you won't get far because, again, I feel these things do really tie back to identity.
Mhm.
And what is your self-talk? And what are you saying about the experiences that you've had? Have you dealt with how you feel? Because if you don't deal with how you feel, you're just dragging that along for the entire journey.
Yeah.
And so many things happen in life. So if you can really face what you've been through and be able to heal from it and get to the root of emotions and admit to yourself and hold space for yourself. And I think that's where self-empathy comes into play, compassion, honesty, to not be judgmental with yourself and to really acknowledge and give yourself the room to feel everything. It's an incredible feeling when you can feel all that you've been through. It's
Yeah.
so empowering,
That and it's liberating.
absolutely liberating. And you realize your mind is running the show. It belongs to you. You will have this for your entire life. You can program your mind to be whatever it is that you want it to be. And you do have the power, provided you know that you have the power to do that. It's
Mhm.
about taking initiative over who you are and how you show up for yourself, how you show up in the world. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? These are all things that we have so much control over.
Mhm.
And
And it's wild when you lean into it.
when you lean into it, it is the most freeing thing you can do for yourself.
Mhm.
It's life-changing.
Yeah. And I think oftentimes it's scary,
Uncomfortable,
uncomfortable.
painful,
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also enlivening.
beautiful, freeing.
Yeah. It does all these things for you. There's this interesting equilibrium that ends up happening, or that you end up
Mhm.
seeing between the painful parts of it and the beautiful parts of it.
Exactly.
And you realize that one wouldn't be painful
Polarity.
unless you had, 100%. That's the best word for it. Is
I
that you see
love it.
you see the polarity between it, where one wouldn't be painful if you didn't know the beauty of the other, and one wouldn't be beautiful if you didn't know the pain.
Yeah.
So it's this really, really interesting, almost, I was going to call it a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not. It's just a really great feedback loop. I mentioned this, I think, in a podcast that I had done with Marty
Mhm.
a little while ago. But
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
you see
I
this
heard
feedback loop happen where the things that are really, really beautiful are only really, really beautiful because of all the shit that was really, really painful.
Yeah.
And all the things that were really, really painful are only painful because you saw how beautiful certain things were.
Mhm.
And that circle ends up getting rounder and rounder, where in some cases
Mhm.
people could argue your highs become higher and your lows become lower.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what it is. I think that's, again, from a self-talk perspective,
Mhm.
you're talking about it in the wrong way. That's you leveling up, is
Right.
what that is. Where as we grow up, for any fellow geeks out there who like video games, there's another boss in the line of any number of other bosses. But the crazy part is that all of those bosses that end up kind of popping up, they'll whoop your ass 10 ways from Sunday, every single time you go after them. But the real boss is just you.
Exactly.
You're the hardest one. You are the most difficult critic of yourself. You're the most difficult, source of judgment in your life. It's not your parents. It's not your friends. It's not anybody else. It's just you. And the way that you can propel yourself forward by getting out of your own way is like, it's biblical. The impact that it can have.
Exactly.
If you just put the stop sign down. But recognizing, here's where it's very, very easy to say. It's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Even recognizing that you're holding up the stop sign, I think sometimes ends up just leaving people shook, really, really shattering people's illusion of comfort. And in some cases, their delusion of comfort. And I say that from a place of having been guilty of it myself. I don't say it for the purpose of just kind of pointing fingers at somebody else. I say it because I went through it myself.
Exactly.
And this isn't to say that even myself, I'm where I'd like to be, but I'm so much more comfortable, confident, and capable of navigating my own life now than I was even a short time back. And it felt weird to even think about that a short time ago, that I don't know how to navigate my own life. But I'm only able to say it now because I realized how terribly managed it was before. By me, I'm not talking about the external sources. Life is what happens when you make plans.
Right. I love this expression because it's so true.
Yeah, there are always going to be things that get in the way of you being where you want to be or becoming the version of you that you want to become.
Right.
But none of what you want would be worth having if you didn't go through all of that hardship, if you didn't go through that process. And again, it's easy to kind of say, oh, go through it. Simple to say, go through it. But the small incremental upgrades that you have to make to yourself as you go are scary as hell.
Of course. And just as you were talking about polarity, there is so much beauty in polarity when you can really dive into that place with yourself and to take accountability as well and responsibility for your contribution to certain decisions, experiences, how things have unfolded. And all of it is an opportunity to train yourself to use your intuition, to use your voice, to stand up for yourself, to recognize what you actually need as a person, also what you need from yourself in order to support yourself as you continue to evolve. And even for myself, I think back to all the different versions of myself that I've been throughout my life. I can remember what I was like as a child, as a teenager, an older teenager, a young adult. And it takes becoming refined through everything that you go through. And there's so much purpose in it. And when you recognize you get to keep all the hard work you've invested in yourself, and this is your vessel and this is your body, and all that transmuting and all that freeing yourself of pain from the past to really use it to empower yourself moving forward. There's so much purpose in that. And of course, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it is so fulfilling. So fulfilling in terms of what the takeaway is.
This reminds me of someone who now I feel I will forever and always have such a tremendous appreciation for. Willis.
Yeah. He's so wonderful.
Will the Beast.
Hi, Willis.
Hey, Willis. How you doing, brother? Lots of love, man.
We miss you.
Willis is a character, if there's ever been one.
Oh, yeah.
But Willis is also one of the single most powerful forces of humanity I think I've ever met.
That energy.
Yeah. And his energy is not an energy that, makes, when I say he's a character because of just how much he loves life.
You'll feel his presence. When he's in a room, you recognize it. And, you come across certain people in life. As soon as they walk in a room, you're like, oh, this is different.
Yeah, the guy is one of the most compassionate, kind,
amazing human beings.
Hilarious human beings I've ever met.
Authentic. I love it. Yeah. Like so authentic and expressive. And to see someone really enjoying themselves, it's so wonderful to be around.
The reason I bring him up, though, is because he's taught me a lot about what he's gone through in terms of his own self-talk and his own journey on self-development. And him and I have had very, very genuine, very, very impactful heart-to-hearts in the most hilariously ridiculous places. We've had them in the gym while he'll remember this. If he's listening, he'll remember this. he was walking backwards on a treadmill
Oh my
because
God.
we always, Willis and I always had eye contact when we chat.
Mm.
And that's part of what I think has made everything that he said to me so impactful and just so memorable,
Mhm.
because we have very, very genuine conversations.
To connect with someone
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it feels deeply intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's walking backwards on this treadmill, and then he's pulling. We're talking 5 pounds on like a tricep on a tricep pulley. He's capable of so much more, you know. He's capable of so much
He
more.
really is.
Yeah.
But 5 pounds is
you see
still
him,
admirable.
You see him pulling 5 pounds, and it's just because, excuse me, it's just because the guy was so into our conversation, and he had so much to say, and he had so much. I could tell he was thinking, and I could tell that it also hit him, because I think he was thinking back to where he was versus where he is versus where he'd like to be, and the path that he has taken to get from one to the other, and the path that he must take to get from where he is now to the next version of himself. And the grace with which he speaks of not leaving versions of himself behind, but instead appreciating them for what they were and how they contributed. Mm-hmm. And you said it best, to thank the old versions of you.
Oh my God, of course.
So I just sold my primary residence, my home. Loved that home. Mm-hmm. And he said to me during one of our conversations, we would meet at, there's a spa in Playa del Carmen that we would meet at, that we would frequent. And we'd have these great conversations in this place. We called it Hot Topic. Yeah. Very great name.
I always wanted to go.
Chilling in the spa, and then, during Hot Topic and having real conversations. But he said to me one day, he said, I wonder, and he asked from a place of grace. He wasn't asking, from a place of malicious intent or anything. It was very, very graceful the way he asked. He said, I wonder if your home is holding you back. And I remember thinking to myself, I've had this thought before, but never in the context that him and I were having this discussion that we were having. And as that conversation went on, and I had told him, I said, this isn't the first time that I've thought about this, and I think I'm actually 99% of the way towards selling this place. He said, just make sure you mourn that place and make sure you thank it.
I'm so happy he said that.
And now, as I look back to even just a handful of weeks back, leaving that home and thanking that home for everything that it contributed to my life, for being a part of my life for the better part of 8 years or whatever it was, to thank it for not just providing me with figurative and literal shelter, but to also have served as you spoke of vessels earlier, to serve as the vessel that catalyzed so much of my own personal growth. I went through a shitstorm in that place, and I went through some of the most profound, life-changing, life-affirming, potential celebrating sort of times of my life. And this isn't to say that I've realized all that potential or that I have capitalized on all of it, just to say thank you for it having provided me with a way to recognize that potential in myself and in the things that were around me and in the people that were around me. Playa would not have happened without that home. Mm-hmm. And now everything that I'm thinking about in Mexico would not have happened without that home. The way that people will come into your life when you make room for them, when you intentionally make room for them. Mm-hmm. And I can say the same. I have, a friend of mine, Christine, a friend of mine, Serge, Constanza. Like I can think of, there's no shortage of people. CO, yeah.
Frijol.
Frijol.
Who Frijol is?
Yeah, Frijol is a little Mexican pup.
Sweetest.
Little Mexican chihuahua.
Feisty.
Man, he was such a little asshole to me when I first met him. Yeah. Just came barking down from like upstairs, just ran down barking at me the whole time.
And he's small.
Yeah, he's a tiny ass little dog.
Small.
But he's got, he's got this hilarious energy to him. And
you feel his presence.
Yeah, because he's yelling at everyone. What are you talking about? You feel his presence. Of course you do. So he rolls up, and I kneel over to look at him like, what? And he just went dead quiet and just laid on his side and looked at me and started just rubbing his belly, and he was just all for it. I was like, that's it? So you've got all the bark and none of the bite?
Exactly.
You little shithead. We love you. Yeah, Frijol is awesome. But anyway, point is that I've spoken to you about this before. I'm a big believer in live as open door policy as you can. And what I mean by that is facilitate somebody's entrance into your life and facilitate their exit. And in this case, I feel, the reason that I'm bringing it up now, in this case, I feel that it's not so much applicable to the people external so much as it is applicable to the versions of you.
Exactly. What resonates.
Yeah, be welcome to the versions of you that are present, obviously. Be kind to those that have left. Celebrate those that have left for the reasons that you celebrate them for, but be mindful of the ways that they held you back. And so now, tying this all up, when Willis said, make sure you thank that home, make sure you mourn that home, and also make sure that home doesn't hold you back.
Yeah.
I felt it was this wild, wild metaphor for me, not for the home. Make sure you celebrate the versions of you that have pushed you forward. Make sure you celebrate the versions of you that have made room for newer versions of you to come along. Make sure you thank the versions of you that have passed, but make sure you don't ever let any one of them hold you back. And when I was pissed off about being in this city, years and years and years earlier, that was a version of me that I was really unhappy about, and a version of me that I was really unhappy with. And the more and more I projected that hatred and that anger outward, the more and more it festered internally for that particular version of me. And that self-talk corrected itself to some extent, but it also got a really, really heavy push in the right direction from very intentional reading, from meeting people that I felt just opened my mind, opened my eyes, opened my heart in a lot of different ways. And I'm glad, I'm just very, very glad, very grateful that I gave myself the space and that I had the awareness to allow them to do that, that I didn't continue getting in the way, because that's what I was doing. Every one of my falls, fuck ups, missteps, they've all been because of me. And I wear those with an undying pride, because I'm glad I went through them. I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't gone through them. And I don't think anybody would be who they are if they didn't go through their mistakes. But making room to truly appreciate them takes a certain level of finesse that I think all of us must continue to work on.
Gotta finesse his whole life.
Yeah.
Finesse is everything. How do you pivot? How can you surrender to what's going on? I even had to learn how to do that. How do you surrender to everything and process things? And again, to recognize there's nothing wrong with starting over. Any opportunity you get to start over is actually a beautiful experience, because you're consciously creating the type of life that you want. You're consciously creating who you want to be, and you bring that with you everywhere. And again, to create space and know you're always evolving. You're always changing at every level and stage of life as you go through things, as you experience things. These are all refining you throughout life. It's ongoing. And there's so much beauty in that.
But I find where I had gone really, really wrong is that I wasn't contributing nearly as much to my own life and to the lives of the people around me as I would have liked. It wasn't because of any lack of effort. It was because of a lack of intention.
Intention is everything.
And this is now, I mean, when we think about the piece of this little discussion that we had about health, being intentional about what you eat, being intentional about the way that you think. There's only a certain number of ways that you can do it in those ways before it starts spilling over into other aspects of your life, which is probably a good segue into relationships, which I feel now I'm so much more selective with the relationships that I build. I'm so much more selective in the ways that I build them. I'm so much more selective in how I celebrate them. I'm so much more selective in the intent that goes behind them. And this isn't to say that I've got it all right. It's not really a science. It is more of because we're all different. We're all, we bring different variables to the table and things.
Right.
It's not a science, but it's definitely something that I've found really intriguing. I think some of it is just an interest in human dynamics. And whether that comes from, when you think about the sexual dynamics between men and women versus you think about the interpersonal dynamics between friends, and how our similarities can bring us together the same way that our differences can bring us together. And oftentimes it's a combination of both that end up forging a relationship that's worth celebrating, whether that be a romantic relationship or otherwise. So, as I said, this is a great segue into how do you feel your healing modalities, or your focus on healing modalities, call it, from a personal level, and your constant effort that you're putting into personal development. How do you feel these two things have ended up impacting your personal relationships?
I feel all these areas are so interconnected. The healing and personal development that you do really does translate to your relationships in terms of how you carry yourself within relationships, to be conscious of how you are as a partner, as a friend, whether it be romantic or platonic friendships. I do feel all these things really do come full circle. Could you ask me the question again? Because I feel there's so many ways
Well,
to answer
it's
this.
a loaded question.
It is, and I just want to make sure I
It's a loaded question, but what I was saying is,
answer it.
how do you feel your healing modalities and your commitment to personal development have
Okay.
impacted your, and maybe led you to developing better personal relationships?
Yeah. I feel to really get in tune with who I am and my self-identity
Mhm.
and how I see myself, and how do relationships resonate with who I am and where I am in life. And again, how you were mentioning being selective, I'm the same way. But I think you also have to process everything that would have taken place beforehand, and to really look at yourself and be aware of how you show up. And I do feel the more rooted you are in yourself, to know and recognize self-love, self-worth, and realize anyone that you invite into your life, you're inviting them into your life, but to be solid in yourself, so you're not pulled in other directions that are inauthentic to who you are. And I think it's really important to be authentic to yourself, and to be honest with yourself, and to be true to yourself. I think that's the most liberating thing you can do for yourself in life, because it translates to everything else, and to be able to speak up for yourself and know your boundaries. And I do feel relationships as a whole serve as a catalyst to really awaken to yourself, because in a relationship, friendships, romantic, otherwise, especially romantic relationships, everything comes out.
Mhm.
You can't hide who you are. And I think that's a beautiful opportunity to be able to experience with someone, because you're both going to awaken something in one another. Whether or not the relationship lasts or it serves its time, some relationships are more meaningful or deeper than others. That's part of the beauty of life as a whole. But the takeaway is, who do you become and how are you learning about yourself? And I do feel so many things in life, it's a mirror. What you see in the world is a mirror of what you're experiencing and the true nature of your heart.
Mhm.
And your character and your personality. All these things come out, and you get to really exercise these muscles to really find what resonates with who you are, and to, again, be honest with yourself, be loyal to yourself. And I think this translates to both relationships. And I think even for myself, healing and the personal development that I've done, I put a lot of work into this. I'm so proud of it, because I know where I've come from. I know the different versions of myself that I've been along my journey and everything. And now I feel so full and content, where I know no matter what happens in life, I'll always be fine.
Mhm.
And these are also principles that I've adopted even when it comes to my view on life. Everything else is just the weather.
You say this in a much more elegant way, and a much more acceptable, and a much more easily digested way
Hmm.
than I tend to.
Do you want to be all rah, rah, rah?
No, I mean,
I could do that too, but it's, again, is that necessary for me to? I do feel it's important you to know how to be an advocate for yourself.
but yeah, so this is what I mean. So now this is a great way for me to talk about what I'm feeling. So I've said, close friends of mine have heard me say this before,
Hmm.
but I've always said, be selfish as fuck.
I have heard you say that, and I was like, tell me about that. But the older I've gotten, I'm like, I understand that.
Well, I'll preface it, right? It's not selfish. Typically, when we hear the word selfish has a very negative connotation to it, as it
Yeah.
should, because it's just, I mean, by definition,
It's the perception of it.
but by definition, it's also not the nicest thing to display. But I'll be really intentional with what I say here.
Hmm.
I say be selfish as fuck, specifically with things that we've just spoken about, your healing modalities, your personal development. The reason I say this is because now, tying it into relationship development and just relationships, period, I know that no one will ever be able to take care of me the way that I can take care of me.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be intentionally as selfish as I can possibly be with all of the things that I'm doing and all the things that I'm trying to do to better myself, so that every single person I meet, I'm able to put my best foot forward for them
Mhm.
in every possible way that I can, so that they see the best version of me that I'm capable of displaying to them and sharing with them at that time.
Mhm.
That's kind of my loose philosophy on it. And of course, I preface it in a really hilarious way.
Well, when you first hear it that way, it's like, wait, what do you mean?
Well, full disclosure, the reason that I say it that way is because people are always like, wait, what do you mean?
Yeah. And you want to be
Are
able
you
to.
being an asshole? Or,
Yeah.
what are you
Like,
talking about?
okay, that's one way to be.
So you're not going to
like-
share your chicken nuggets? Like, what do you mean? You're not going to share your nuggies? People will get a little standoffish at first,
Yeah.
but then you speak from the heart to the quality of what you're saying.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden people are like, I get it.
They're like, that makes sense.
Maybe I should be more selfish. It's like, you should absolutely be more selfish.
Yeah.
Not in ways
That's
that
detrimental or harmful to others.
it's never going to be at the expense of somebody else.
Yeah.
But it also can't be at the expense of you. You can't be selfless at the expense of the things that you need to be better at.
Mhm.
So if someone keeps making the same mistakes, so now as we speak of relationships, that dude who keeps getting mixed up with the wrong girl, or that girl who keeps getting mixed up with the wrong guy, or that guy who keeps getting mixed up with the wrong guy, or that girl who keeps getting mixed up with the wrong girls, or any denomination and combination that you can think of. Doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Human to human, call it. If someone keeps going through emotions like that, you've heard me say this before, they are the common denominator. They themselves. So if I'm a heterosexual male, if I keep going through relationships with women and I'm not finding any kind of happiness, I'm the common denominator. I have to level up,
Mhm.
period. And not just leveling up in terms of what I'm putting forward into the sexual marketplace with respect to my potential partners. I'm talking I have to level up for me.
Mhm.
I have to be a better version of me so that I'm happier with myself. So that when I meet somebody who I feel might actually be worthwhile for me to spend some meaningful time with, and who I'd like to share certain aspects of my life with, or potentially a bunch of aspects of my life with, I know that I can share that with her from a place of happiness. No one can fill the void of unhappiness for you better than you can.
Exactly.
So be selfish enough to fill it yourself, and then bring somebody else along when you feel you can contribute to their life from a place of peace, of tranquility.
Can we talk about peace?
Yeah.
The importance of peace and inner peace. And I feel even having to learn and accept that anything that someone else does is a reflection of them. That doesn't have anything to do with you. You do not need to take on other people's projections and absorb them.
Yes and no.
To an extent.
Yeah.
To an extent, but especially in relationships. And that comes back to inner peace. And again, when we are always hearing two whole people, what kind of relationship will they create versus two people who are just going through it and
Or
acting
fragments.
out things off of one another? What's really going on the subconscious? Have they healed from their childhood? Have they healed from previous relationships? Also, to be taking time to heal from the things that you've gone through in between your relationships. If you can really look at those opportunities as a chance to grow and reflect, so you can create something that's more aligned with who you are, it benefits everyone, and especially yourself. But again, to be rooted in yourself, this whole concept you're speaking about being selfish, it is important. You have to know how to protect yourself, how to put yourself first, your self-talk, and to not get pulled into something else that's going to disempower you. Again, empowering yourself as a person.
Yeah, but we are fantastic creatures of rationalization. We'll oftentimes give ourselves a pass more so than we ever should for things that we should never accept, period, let alone continue.
That's where honesty comes into play.
Usually being honest with yourself is the hardest part, though.
Yeah, but that's like any other thing. Can you exercise that muscle to be honest with yourself and not run away from it? And to really face yourself and be like, what do I bring to the table in a relationship? What am I like as a partner, as a friend? Everything is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And to show up for yourself, and also to recognize you are responsible for your own happiness.
Yeah.
A partner or friend, it's going to add to your life. That doesn't make your life. There's no concept of someone else completes you. You complete yourself. When you recognize the most intimate relationship you will ever have in your life is with yourself, that will change your life.
Yeah.
You are with yourself from the moment you're here through all of your experiences. You are waking up to yourself every day. You're going, of course, you could be like in a household, this, that, so many other variables. But you're going to bed with yourself every single day. You have been there for yourself through your highs and your lows, everything in between. Nourish that relationship. Nourish the self-talk, because it shows up in every other aspect of your life.
This is a good time to plug a book.
So many books.
Yeah, there's been a lot of them.
Yeah.
several of which have absolutely left me shook and rattled
Hmm.
and questioning everything that I thought I had a good handle on, which arguably it's what you want
Of course.
from, and whether that's a competing view or something that really complements what you already feel,
Right.
doesn't matter. Gary John Bishop wrote a book called Unfuck Yourself. And he's this Irishman. I have a physical copy of this book. It's a thin book. It's an easy book to read. And I read through this book and I remember thinking to myself, like, this is as simple as it was profound in its simplicity, which is what I celebrated most about that book. And then I got the audiobook, and I only really listen to audiobooks that are narrated by the author
I'm the same way.
because I want to hear it. Like, in my mind, I'm
Yeah.
saying, if you read the book, you're reading it through your own perception, through your own voice. It's your own voice that's left for interpretation by you. So you're only going to interpret that through what you've effectively created, which is an echo chamber.
Mhm.
It's going to be your own voice, your own perception, your own thoughts, your own experiences, et cetera, et cetera. But when you hear a book read to you by the author, you're hearing it as it was intended to be heard. Your perception is still your own perception kind of thing, but you're hearing the pitch, the tonality, the inflection in their voice. You're hearing all the emotion behind some of the things that they're saying, provided they're a good narrator. And in his case, he is. And the book just goes through a series of self-affirmations, one of which is, I am not my thoughts, I am what I do.
Mhm.
And oftentimes I remember thinking to myself, I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't happy where I was. I felt there was so much more ahead of me that I wasn't prepared for. I felt all of these things. These were all thoughts. None of this was actually real. And then I went and I built this business. I went and I did this, I did that. I did all these different things. And that's when it started feeling real. But all of a sudden, all those things that I was once petrified by were faded into the background to the point that I hadn't thought about them for years. And so all this to say, I think the way that the things we want in life manifest themselves happens almost exclusively based on the thoughts that we allow to manifest in our head.
Mhm.
And one cannot happen without the other. And the bad shit, stupid shit only happens when it's going on. It'll only manifest itself in real life when it manifests itself in your head,
Mhm.
which is now when I think about when I hated the city that I was in and I hated the place that I was in, and
Mhm.
personally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, geographically, when I hated all of that, it
Mhm.
was a outward projection of all of
What's
what was
going
going
on
on in my
inside.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, when I think back, I say that was such a fantastic, fantastic waste of my own potential at the time.
Mm.
And until I got out of that way, until I got out of my way and I put down that stop sign, none of what I wanted would have come to me, regardless of if I had been in the exact place that I wanted to be at the exact time that I wanted to be in the exact position that I wanted to be, etc.
Mhm.
None of it would have happened. If I was in that headspace, all that anger, despair, discomfort, all of that would have still been present if everything else was exactly the way that I wanted it to be, because it happened at the origin. It happened at my point of origin.
Mhm.
So all of this to say, we give ourselves way too much credit when we shouldn't, and we don't give ourselves enough credit when we should.
That was an important lesson for me to have to learn, to give myself more credit for the things that I've endured and the things that I've dealt with and the way I've just, again, had to finesse life with things that were going on. And we speak about this all the time because how much I love Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Mhm.
His teachings, the way his teachings resonate with me, and I know so many people all over the world have benefited from his teachings, whether they're books, interviews, podcasts, audiobooks, to really recognize and pay attention to the construct of identity. And we have 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Are those thoughts rooted in the past or are they rooted in the future? Are you replaying the same thing for 20 years?
Mhm.
Are you activating the same hormones and just loop in your mind? Or are you freeing yourself? And how do you see yourself? And to really free yourself. And again, this is connected to so many other things. The way we think is also correlated to our health and empowering. And what are you professing over yourself? What are you professing over your body to really empower yourself and to then free yourself and to realize you have the ability to create the future through your thoughts? And
Mhm.
again, power of manifestation, visualization. If you can see it in your mind, you can achieve it through belief, but you have to have that belief. And it's also exercising those muscles. You're only going to be as successful as you allow yourself to be and believe yourself to be. and realize you can recreate at so many different times in life. There's no end to this. Like, also, when you can look at this and be like, hey, this could actually be fun to recreate and really immerse yourself in the experience of life, you show up so differently. And again, the most powerful thing about Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, it's rooted in epigenetics, neuroscience, health. There's actual concrete science and evidence behind these things. They're doing brain scans on tumors disappearing, spontaneous remissions. People are being told, hey, you have XYZ ailment, you have this amount of time. And then you have people who are getting to the root of their emotions. These emotions are firing off certain circuitry in the body. What is that doing to your mind? How do you see yourself? Are you rooted in the past? Are you so connected to that you're getting in your own way? Or are you recognizing the power of your mind? All we're ever experiencing throughout our entire lives is our own mind. So to realize how much power we have if we're able to unlock that and use it in our favor, and it extends to every other aspect of life, that has been life-changing. I would encourage anyone, if you haven't come across his work, it is incredible. It is profound. And there are so many incredible authors available, podcasts. Like, we have a wealth of information available to us all the time. You just have to go looking. You just have to ask questions.
We have a wealth of information, but a lack of critical thinking.
Right?
I'll leave that for another one.
That part. But again, do you want to empower yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the nice thing about that wealth of information is that now there's such an abundance of it that it can really give you a clear line from wherever you might be to where you'd like to go.
Exactly.
Just through perception alone. Through you saying, yes, this can get me there. I have to give this an honest shot. I have to be very genuine with the effort that I'm going to put into it, and I have to be consistent with it. Transparent with yourself. Mm-hmm. And this is actually that floppy-haired good friend of mine, Andrew.
You mean Andrew. Yeah. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew. Love that guy. But anyway, he's an unbelievable example of what you're capable of accomplishing when you put yourself first. And when you, like I keep saying, when you get out of your own way. Andrew is a testament to just a good human. Yeah. Right along with, right beside Wildebeest. And Surge for that matter. But I mean, I look at these are some of the highest quality men that I've ever had the luxury, privilege, and honor of ever sharing air with, let alone being so close to them and having them, as a part of the squad. I think of, there's this men's group that I ran a while back. I think about some of the men who, they came into that group because they wanted to improve their romantic lives with women. And one of the first things that I would say to them is, if you want to improve your romantic lives with women, then improve your life, period, with high quality men. Exactly. And watch what happens. Watch how much they fuel you to be a better version of yourself. Beautiful women and all this shit, they're a dime a dozen. You can find them everywhere you go. High quality men are some of the most scarce humans you will ever find on the planet. On the planet. And I'm sitting here with 5 or 6 of them, within a pinky's reach, and the more and more I think of the way that, like I keep saying, the way that Andrew, Surge, and Wildebeest, the way that these guys have built their lives, it's not that they've built a career worth celebrating. It's not that they've built a social circle worth celebrating. It's that they've built a relationship with themselves that is so firmly grounded in their principles, in their ethics, in their ideology, their philosophy on just living the best life that they can, that all of the benefits that come from that, there's so many of them that they have to spill out. They can't contain it. And that's where, when we talk about somebody radiating a particular kind of energy,
you feel it.
That's where it comes from. It comes from somebody who just can't help but have that spill over, because they're such powerful versions of themselves, because they put the work into just enjoying their own life enough and ridding themselves of the things that might have been a poison.
To not block yourself.
Releasing toxicity from whatever.
Healing things and freeing things so you could also move more freely into the future. And to not be hanging on to all these things that are just weighing you down and they're actually detrimental to yourself. Free yourself. Free your mind.
The way that we spoke of liberty earlier in terms of how liberating it can be when you get out of your own way.
Mhm.
The way that ends up becoming the catapult for your life, the catalyst for your life,
A testament of your character.
and the way that you can't turn it off. When you lean into it, you just cannot turn it off. It becomes, I asked you the question earlier, what have become certain things that are automatic for you?
Mhm.
When you start leaning into shit like this, you just cannot
Mhm.
turn it off.
Exactly. And when you practice these things, that becomes your new default setting.
Yeah.
And you continue to move from that place. Even, for instance, Muhammad Ali, I am the greatest. Professing that and having so much conviction in that.
Mhm.
Self-talk, self-discipline, self-worth. You create these things. It's all within your power.
Mm. So we're going to have to do this again at some point. We'll either pick up on maybe more of these topics, or we'll come through with a new set. Maybe coming through with a new set and filtering it back to some of what we spoke about today would be the right way to do this.
Yeah.
You down?
Yeah, I'd love to be
You
back.
think you're gonna have another pre-podcast injury?
You know what? My hand is feeling totally great.
Is it still bleeding everywhere?
It's bleeding a little bit, but I'll be okay. I'm a trooper.
Oh,
I'm
are you?
such a trooper.
I mean, yeah, after wearing the headphones sideways, yeah, I can only imagine.
I was really scared that I was not going to be able to get my hand in. You even had a hard time pulling my hand
Well,
out
because
of
I was
it.
worried you was going to take your thumb with it.
I thought so, but it's mine.
You powered through.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to come back with no trauma.
Healed.
Oh,
Hmm.
One last thing.
Right.
Let's talk about mice.
Okay.
So
See?
you've had this. Let me preface this with my understanding of this
And
real quick.
I have snippets to add to this, and this is also related to Dr. Joe Dispenza's teachings in
Okay.
general. So you can go ahead.
Yeah. So
Wait, are you going to present this, or should I?
I'm going to present a piece of this really quick.
Okay, let's see how you frame
This is why I was saying
this.
just my perception, because I really want.
Oh, okay, your perception and my life experience. Let's go.
Yeah. What are you going to listen to? Your own life experience? With me? Come on. So you were afraid of mice
at the age of 8.
8 up until now, and so it's been a hot minute.
20, yeah.
For whatever reason, you just refused to go near them. You were repulsed by the very sight of them.
I wouldn't say repulsed. It was more so petrified.
So you couldn't even really get away. You would just freeze.
And that's the thing. I would freeze.
Okay.
But I was petrified inside.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, so you were petrified. You're frozen.
Yeah.
When you saw little mice, we're talking field mice, and in your head, it was because of their tail.
Yeah, but again, we have to talk about what was the trauma associated with
It was
emotions.
childhood trauma. But we'll keep this really short and sweet, right? So it was childhood trauma that this was born out of.
From memorized emotion.
Yeah.
How Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, you have memorized emotions associated with certain
It's like a blueprint of
fears.
reaction.
Yeah, it's a blueprint. So when you come across that, oh my God, you get the same reaction immediately. I wasn't able to look at even a picture of mice in textbooks.
Even cute mice.
I know, I was cute. See, now I can see that they're cute in hindsight, now that I've healed and I've transmuted these traumas, but I couldn't look at them in textbooks, even if there was a truck driving by for
pest control or whatever.
Pest control. And I'm driving and I see like there's a huge mouse. I'm like, oh my God, I literally can't even look that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was difficult. Yeah.
So you were afraid of mice until you actually forced yourself to go so far as to put your hand in a mouse cage and almost pet a mouse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a big deal. It sounds minuscule, but I had this fear for more than 20 years.
So it's been a 22-year long
trauma.
Fear of cute little awesome mice.
Yeah.
And now you want them.
Well, I don't know if I want them, but they're so sweet.
But you'd play with mice.
Well, now they're sweet.
Okay, so this is effectively your commitment to buying mice and bringing them to the studio next time so that you can play with them in front of everybody.
Probably not, but I encourage everyone to lean into those traumas. And if you have a friend or a partner or someone who can help you through that, to really get to the root of what happened here and realize this is just a really heightened fear that you have, you can get past this. And you too can get on the other side.
Exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy, right. I was very resistant to it at first, but it has served me well now.
And now you find yourself thinking about them even when you were long gone.
Sweet, yeah.
You went so far as to name them, if I recall.
Yeah. Chonk.
Yeah. Chonk was one of them.
I don't remember the other
names. Spot, I think, was one of them or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, Chonk was a funny ass name.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about mice and other things next time.
Okay.
But I'm glad you were able to come by. I'm glad the injury wasn't too serious and that it's not going to leave you a So
Wow. Okay.
you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Anyway, I'm glad we were able to chat. We'll chat again soon. Yeah.
This is great. Yeah.